Play it again, Lily said, pointing at Marcus across the glass table. His blue maintenance shirt had no name badge, only a pale rectangle where M. Reed had been, and a suspension envelope hung from his bandaged hand. Evelyn Whitmore stood behind her daughter, frozen. The pink smartwatch on Lily's wrist pulsed with a tiny star as Grant Hale reached for the report. That recording proves nothing. Lily pulled back. He kept us calm. 3 hours earlier, a dry metallic crack had split the morning noise inside Whitmore Tower. The elevator alarm began screaming before anyone understood what had happened. Marcus Reed was crossing the marble lobby with his worn leather tool bag when the display above elevator 4 flashed between 14 and 15. Then came the sound that did not belong. A sharp click, a pause, and another click beneath it, as if the door lock had tried to catch twice and failed both times. Marcus dropped the bag and ran. Caleb sat near the security desk with his backpack between his shoes, waiting for his father's shift to end. He looked up just as Marcus pressed his ear against the elevator doors. Children were crying inside. A woman shouted that the cabin had dropped. "Nobody forced the doors," Marcus said. His voice was low, but it cut through the panic. Operations Manager Grant Hale arrived in a gray suit, speaking into his phone with the controlled urgency of a man who wanted everyone to see him taking charge. "Get those doors open before the investors reach the lobby." A teacher trapped inside wedged the metal handle of an umbrella into the gap. Marcus flattened himself against the floor. "Ma'am, take it out. The cabin may not be level. There are children in here. That's why I need you to trust me." Through the narrow seam, Marcus saw 3 frightened faces and one small white girl crouched against the mirrored wall. Her visitor badge read Lily W. A pink smartwatch trembled on her wrist, its screen showing a blinking star. A tiny red microphone dot appeared beside it as her heart rate climbed. "Lily," Marcus said, reading the badge. "Keep your eyes on that star. Breathe in while it grows. Hold. Now breathe out while it gets smaller." She tried once and failed. Marcus counted again. By the 3rd breath, 2 other children had begun following her. He opened the service panel. The smell of hot insulation reached him before he saw the scorched edge of the relay housing. When the rescue crew forced the outer door 6 inches apart, the cabin sat several inches below the floor. Marcus braced one bleeding hand against the loose metal panel and used his body to shield the opening while each child crawled through. Lily came last. She gripped his sleeve until both feet touched the marble. Then the lobby filled with phones, questions, and adult voices rising over one another. Grant pointed at Marcus. He touched the controls. He bypassed the lockout. Lily's breathing broke again. Caleb stood behind the security rope, watching strangers turn toward his father. Marcus looked at the shaking children, then at Grant. "Put it on me," he said quietly. "Just get the kids somewhere safe." Grant's expression settled into something almost relieved. "You heard him." He accepted responsibility. Derek Shaw stepped between Marcus and the crowd and covered the lens of his body camera with one hand. The green light blinked 3 more times before going dark. Marcus lowered his injured hand and noticed a wet thread of red paper caught beneath his thumbnail. He looked back at Grant. No one in that lobby had mentioned a lockout, yet Grant had just named one. Marcus kept his eyes on the red paper beneath his thumbnail. "What lockout?" he asked. Grant's smile barely moved. "This is not the time. You made it the time." The elevator alarm had stopped, but its thin electronic echo still seemed trapped in the marble lobby. Camera phones hovered above shoulders, and the air smelled of hot wiring, floor polish, and the sharp antiseptic a paramedic had opened beside the children. Derek Shaw stepped closer, his dark security jacket filling Marcus's view. "Mr. Reed, please cooperate." His tone was gentle enough for the watching parents, but his hand stayed near Marcus's elbow as though Marcus might run. "I am cooperating," Marcus said. "Then surrender your badge and company keys." Caleb stood behind the velvet security rope with his backpack pressed against his knees. He watched Derek reach for the blue maintenance shirt his father had worn through hundreds of night calls. Frozen pipes, faulty breakers, and alarms no executive ever heard. The badge came free with a dry plastic snap. Beneath it, the faded cloth showed a clean rectangle where M. Reed had protected the fabric from years of dust. "This is a temporary administrative action," a woman said as she crossed the lobby in narrow black heels. Vanessa Cole carried a cream folder against her charcoal suit, her expression composed and sympathetic. "No conclusions have been reached. We are simply protecting the integrity of the investigation and the well-being of everyone involved." Marcus looked at the folder. His name had already been printed across the top page. "When did the investigation begin?" "Mr. Reed, this is not a disciplinary hearing." "Then why is there a disciplinary notice?" Vanessa paused for less than a second. Fluorescent light slid across the silver clasp of her folder as she opened it. "Effective immediately, you were suspended pending review of a serious safety violation involving unauthorized access, improper equipment handling, and possible failure to follow lockout procedure." Around them, whispers moved like air beneath a door. The parent lowered her phone but did not stop recording. One of Marcus's co-workers stared at the floor. Another quietly stepped away from him, as though blame might spread through proximity. Near the medical station, Lily pulled at Vanessa's sleeve. "He didn't make us scared." Vanessa bent down with a practiced softness. "I know this was frightening, sweetheart. He told us how to breathe. The adults are going to handle the truth now." Lily's fingers closed around the pink smartwatch on her wrist. The star on its screen had stopped pulsing, but a small red microphone symbol remained in the corner. Vanessa straightened before the girl could say anything else. Marcus saw Lily's mouth close. He also saw Caleb watching her be dismissed. "Dad," Caleb said quietly. "Tell them." Marcus looked at his son. "Not here." "Why not?" "Because those children are still listening." A man near the elevator whispered that Marcus had admitted it. Someone else said maintenance workers always covered for one another. Caleb heard both. His face tightened, and when Marcus reached for him, the boy pulled his hand back. The movement was small, but it struck harder than Derek removing the badge. Vanessa extended a document. "Sign that you received notice." Marcus read every line before taking the pen. The paper described his words as a voluntary acceptance of responsibility. He crossed out the sentence, initialed the change, and wrote beneath it, "Statement made to stop an argument in front of distressed children." Then he handed the pen back. "The matching elevators need to be shut down." Grant folded his arms. "You are no longer authorized to issue operational instructions." The lock sounded twice before failure. "Your opinion will be included in the review." "It is not an opinion. Check the door contacts." Grant's face remained professional, but a muscle tightened near his jaw. Vanessa slid another sheet from the folder, and Marcus noticed the footer, "Media Response Draft," printed at 11:43 a.m. The inspection team had not arrived until afternoon. Caleb followed his father's gaze but could not know what the time meant. Marcus did. Someone had written the company's answer before anyone opened the damaged panel. Derek guided him toward the exit. As they passed elevator 4, Marcus saw a sliver of red paper caught behind the metal frame at knee height. He slowed. Derek immediately stepped between him and the panel. "Keep moving, Mr. Reed." Vanessa closed her folder behind them. "For clarity," she said, "that unauthorized red tag will be addressed in the final report." Marcus stopped. He had never told Vanessa the tag was red. Marcus had never told Vanessa the tag was red. He held her gaze for one quiet second, long enough for the polished certainty in her face to flicker. Then he turned toward the revolving doors without arguing. Caleb walked beside him with his backpack hanging from one shoulder, keeping half a step of distance between them. Outside, traffic hissed across wet pavement, and the cold air carried the smell of exhaust and rain. "Did you know they were going to blame you?" Caleb asked. "No." "Then why didn't you fight them?" Marcus looked down at the bandage a paramedic had wrapped around his palm. A dark spot of blood was already spreading through the white gauze. "Fighting and making noise are not always the same thing." Caleb kicked at a bottle cap near the curb. It looked the same to everybody watching. Marcus did not answer. His phone vibrated in his pocket with an automated message from the apartment complex reminding him that rent was due in 4 days. He read it once, locked the screen, and guided Caleb away from the street as a delivery truck turned too sharply around the corner. They had reached the parking garage when Marcus stopped. The company radio was still clipped to his belt, and the brass key ring in his pocket pulled heavily against his work pants. "We have to go back." Caleb stared at him. "They just threw you out. These do not belong to me. They took your badge. That does not make their property mine." The security guard at the side entrance looked surprised when Marcus returned. Derek was no longer at the desk, so Marcus placed the radio, keys, and company-issued flashlight in a gray plastic tray. His worn leather tool bag stayed over his shoulder. The tools inside were his own, bought one piece at a time across 15 years. As he signed the return sheet, a metal cart struck the edge of a doorway somewhere beyond the lobby. The clang was brief, but a child gasped sharply in the medical room behind the frosted glass. Marcus recognized the sound that followed. Not crying, but breath arriving too fast to be useful. He moved toward the door. Vanessa stepped into his path. "Mr. Reed, you have completed your property return. Someone is having trouble breathing. Lily needs space. Space is not helping her." Through the glass, Lily sat on the floor with her knees pulled against her chest. Her teacher crouched nearby, speaking too quickly. The pink smartwatch flashed warnings against the child's wrist. Marcus waited until Vanessa shifted aside, then entered without touching Lily or moving closer than a few feet. He lowered himself onto one knee and placed his open hand on the floor where she could see it. "You do not have to look at me," he said. "Just find something that moves slowly." Lily's eyes darted toward the star on her watch, but the warning screen kept interrupting it. Marcus reached into his wallet and removed a small laminated card. Its corners softened from years of handling. A blue star had been drawn on one side in faded marker. Beneath it, in careful handwriting, were 4 short instructions for breathing. His wife had made it for Caleb when thunder used to wake him as a little boy. Marcus slid the card across the tile. "Follow the points with your finger. 1 breath for each side." Lily pressed 1 fingertip to the first point. Marcus breathed with her, silently at first, then counted low enough that the adults had to stop talking to hear him. By the 4th star, her shoulders had lowered. By the 6th, the alert on the smartwatch stopped flashing. "You can keep it," Marcus said. Lily looked at the card. "What if you need it?" Marcus glanced through the glass at Caleb. "We remember how it works." Evelyn Whitmore entered the lobby as Marcus rose. She saw only the end of it. A suspended maintenance worker walking away while her daughter held a worn breathing card against her chest. Marcus did not know who Evelyn was. He nodded politely and returned to the security desk, where he removed a black maintenance notebook from his tool bag. He opened it to the day's entry and placed it beneath the returned radio. The page carried a carbon copy pressed deep enough to mark the sheet below. 8:12 a.m., R 4817, double engagement noise. Do not return to service. That stays with the investigation, Marcus told the guard. Derek appeared from the hallway almost immediately. Personal notebooks are not official records. Then there is no reason to move it away from that camera. Derek's hand stopped inches above the cover. Marcus signed the property sheet, added one final note requesting inspection of every matching elevator before the next school tour, and left with Caleb. Behind him, Lily whispered into her smartwatch. Marcus Reed made the noise smaller. Evelyn looked from the pink watch to the carbon impression in the open notebook, and for the first time, she understood that the small act Marcus had returned to perform might also prove exactly when he had tried to prevent the disaster. Evelyn did not touch the notebook at first. She stood beneath the cold lobby lights while Derek's hand hovered above its black cover and Lily held Marcus's worn breathing card against her sweater. "Seal the notebook," Evelyn said. "Do not remove it from camera view." Derek lowered his hand. Vanessa stepped closer. "Evelyn." The employee returned after suspension and inserted an unofficial record into the investigation. "That is possible." Evelyn looked toward the revolving doors Marcus had just passed through. It is also possible the official record is incomplete. She did not call him back. She did not restore his badge. By evening, the notebook, Lily's smartwatch, the teacher's statement, and Grant's incident report sat beneath separate evidence sleeves on a walnut conference table. Rain traced silver lines down the windows of the 27th floor. Vanessa's perfume lingered above the smell of printer toner and coffee that had gone cold. Grant spoke first. Marcus Reed was the last technician to service Elevator 4. He also documented a lockout, Evelyn said. In a personal notebook, Grant replied. Written after the fact, for all we know. The carbon impression ran through 3 sheets. The pressure marks continued evenly from entries made days earlier. But Evelyn knew that consistency was not proof by itself. Marcus had access to technical language. He understood maintenance records. A careful man could still protect himself after a mistake. What about the electronic order? She asked. Derek turned a laptop toward her. There is no active lockout in the system. Was there one this morning? Not that we can confirm. Lily sat outside the glass wall with a child advocate and her teacher. She was not being questioned. Evelyn had insisted on that. But when the teacher was asked whether Marcus had forced the doors, she frowned and rubbed the bridge of her nose. I had the umbrella, she said. I thought I could make the opening wider. And Mr. Reed? He told me to stop. Grant leaned forward. You were under extreme stress. Memory can reorganize events. Maybe. The teacher looked through the glass at Lily. But I remember his exact words because I was angry at him for saying them. Evelyn's eyes moved to the smartwatch. Its pink band was scuffed near the clasp, and the screen held a hairline crack from the rescue. The battery showed 3%. A digital technician connected it to an isolated reader, but the audio file had failed during synchronization. Only 11 seconds could be recovered. Static filled the room first. Then Marcus's voice emerged, quiet beneath the elevator alarm. Do not force the doors. A child breathed rapidly near the microphone. Marcus spoke again. The red lockout tag is gone. Somewhere farther away, a man said, We don't have time for this before the tour. The file ended with a click. Grant exhaled through his nose. That proves Reed knew about the missing tag. It does not prove he placed it. The timestamp? Evelyn asked. Recorded before the rescue doors opened, the technician said. Device clock matches the building network within 2 seconds. Vanessa folded her hands. He may have removed the tag himself, realized the risk, then created a handwritten entry to shift responsibility. The explanation was ugly, but it was possible. Evelyn looked at the sealed notebook, then at the server summary. A faint transaction marker remained at 8:12 a.m. Not the contents of an order, only a cryptographic trace showing that something had been submitted and later removed from the visible interface. Evelyn called Marcus from the conference speaker. He answered on the 4th ring. Traffic murmured behind him. Mr. Reed, she said, did you alter any digital maintenance record today? No, ma'am. Can you prove that? Pause followed, not defensive, only measured. Is the 812 hash still on the server? Every face at the table changed slightly. Grant looked down. Derek stopped tapping his thumb against the laptop. Evelyn asked, How did you know there would be one? Because the system creates it before the work order appears on screen. Marcus's voice remained even. If the order is gone but the hash stayed, somebody deleted the display record. May I ask one question? Go ahead. What happened at 8:19? Grant answered before Evelyn could. Nothing significant. The system was stabilized. Silence settled across the table. Evelyn had never mentioned 8:19. She turned slowly toward the access logs, where one unopened entry waited 7 minutes after Marcus's lockout hash. The room door record showed a high-level security badge entering the machine room at 8:18, and the missing maintenance order had been overwritten exactly 1 minute later. The machine room log remained open on the conference screen. 8:18 a.m. High-level security access. 8:19 a.m. Return to service command. Grant recovered first. A badge entry is not proof of misconduct. No, Evelyn said, but it is enough to test the rest. By midnight, Elevator 4 had been sealed behind yellow barriers, and an independent elevator engineer named Paul Reyes stood inside a matching cabin on the service level. Grant insisted Marcus's suspension barred him from touching company equipment, so Marcus remained outside the threshold with a union representative beside him. The air smelled of machine oil, warm dust, and coffee from a paper cup no one had finished. 3 audio clips waited on a tablet. Each contained the metallic movement of an elevator door lock engaging. You said you heard something before the failure, Reyes said. Tell me which one. Marcus listened to the first clip without moving. The lock snapped once, clean and hard. The second produced a lighter click, a pause no longer than a heartbeat, then a second contact beneath it. Marcus lifted one hand. Play that again. Grant folded his arms. We are not conducting a guessing game. Then let him explain before you dismiss the answer, Evelyn said. The ventilation fan hummed above them. Somewhere beyond the concrete wall, a cable settled with a low steel groan. Marcus listened again, then placed 2 fingers against the outside of the cabin door as Reyes cycled the mechanism. He closed his eyes, not for drama, but to separate the vibration from the surrounding machinery. The first contact is catching, he said. The second is trying to confirm the lock after heat has already slowed the relay. Reyes studied him. Where? Marcus pointed near the lower edge of the door control housing. Behind the contact plate, left side. Grant gave a small, patient smile. Mr. Reed serviced this model for years. He knows where failures usually occur. That is why we are opening it, Evelyn replied. Reyes removed the panel himself. Marcus stepped back before the screws touched the tray, making certain no one could say he had altered the equipment. The metal plate came free with a dry scrape. Inside, one contact point was blackened around the edge. The insulation beside it browned from repeated heat. Reyes touched a probe to the relay, checked the reading, then looked toward Evelyn. Double engagement, he said. Exactly as Mr. Reed documented. The union representative stopped turning a pen between his fingers. Grant's smile disappeared, though his voice remained measured. A burned contact does not establish when the damage occurred. No, Marcus said, but it establishes the sound was real. He did not look at Grant when he said it. He looked toward the technician standing nearest the control box. Shut down every matching unit until the contacts are inspected. That would close 4 elevators overnight, Grant said. We have a financial group touring the building at 8. Then they can take the stairs, Marcus answered. The room became still enough for the air conditioning relay to click overhead. Evelyn slowly lowered her hand onto the closed incident folder. She had expected Marcus to use the test to defend himself. Instead, he was asking her to create a larger disruption that might make his return harder, because people he did not know could be riding the same equipment by morning. Reyes pulled the electronic service history onto the tablet. The 812 maintenance hash matched the carbon copy in Marcus's notebook. At 8:18, Derek's badge had opened the machine room. At 8:19, the lockout had been overridden through a terminal that required both physical access and a senior authorization code. The system could not have restarted itself? Evelyn asked. Not after a hard lockout, Reyes said. Someone returned it to service. Derek, standing near the door, kept his hands clasped behind him. My credential may have been copied. Possible, Evelyn said. Preserve the reader logs and the original badge data. Grant stepped forward. Evelyn, before we make this larger than it is, let me handle the internal review. Quietly, we do not want people misunderstanding a single failed relay. Marcus turned toward him. Which relay? Grant blinked. The damaged one. You called it Lot 6B upstairs. No one spoke. Reyes had not yet announced the manufacturing lot, and the number was printed only on the hidden side of the part now resting in his gloved hand. Grant glanced at the blackened relay, then toward Evelyn. Operations receives purchasing summaries. Then bring me every summary, she said. Her tone had changed, not louder, only stripped of trust. Lily was asleep at home by then, the faded breathing card resting beside her pink watch. Caleb sat in a plastic chair outside the service room, watching through the glass as his father refused the reinstatement form Evelyn's attorney had begun preparing. Not until the other units are cleared, Marcus said. Reyes scanned the relay code into his tablet. A list appeared beneath it, longer than anyone expected. The same refurbished lot had not been installed in 4 elevators at Whitmore Tower. It had been approved for 11 other buildings. The list on Reyes's tablet kept scrolling. 11 other buildings, 27 elevators, schools, medical offices, apartment towers, and 1 assisted living center where the same refurbished lot had been installed under Grant Hale's approval code. Shut them down, Marcus said. Grant's head turned sharply. You do not have the authority to make that decision. Then someone who does needs to make it now. Evelyn looked at the addresses glowing on the screen. For several seconds, the only sound in the service room was the cooling fan inside the open control cabinet. Then she took out her phone. Issue an emergency suspension on every matching unit. Notify the local inspectors and building managers. No quiet replacements. Grant stepped closer. Evelyn, that could trigger evacuations, lawsuits, panic. A hidden defect already created the danger, she said. Telling people about it creates a record. By sunrise, the investigation had moved into a secure records room on the 27th floor. Gray light pressed against the windows, and stacks of purchasing files covered the long table. Reyes placed the blackened relay beside a torn piece of red paper recovered from behind Elevator 4's control panel. The fragment carried the final digits 4817. A thin black fiber clung to the adhesive edge. Standard security glove material, Reyes said. Common enough that it does not identify one person. But it confirms someone handled the tag after it was attached. Derek's face stayed still, but he slid his hands into his jacket pockets. The access log placed his badge in the machine room at 8:18. The override followed 1 minute later. Now the torn tag placed a gloved hand inside the same panel. None of the pieces proved the whole act alone. Together, they began to form a shape. A procurement analyst opened the records for Lot 6B. Grant had signed the authorization for refurbished components across all 12 properties. Attached to the invoice was an email from the supplier warning that several door contacts required additional heat testing before installation. The message had been received 3 weeks earlier. Vanessa had opened the attachment for 7 minutes, renamed the subject line Routine Vendor Notice, and filed it beneath General Correspondence. I review hundreds of messages, she said. That does not mean I understood the technical significance. Then why change the subject? Evelyn asked. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her phone. To keep the inbox organized. The explanation sounded reasonable until the analyst opened another file. 2 earlier maintenance complaints from other buildings had also been renamed and moved out of the urgent folder. In both cases, low-level technicians had reported a double-clicking door lock. In both cases, management had closed the complaints as operator error. Marcus read the names at the bottom of those reports. A night mechanic, a building custodian, a contract maintenance worker, people whose uniforms made them easy to blame and whose job titles made them easy to ignore. They did this before, Caleb said from the doorway. His voice was quiet, not accusing. Marcus turned. We do not know that yet. But their names are there. Their names are there. The rest still has to be proven. Marcus could have used the moment to condemn Grant. Instead, he asked the union representative to contact the 3 workers and protect them from retaliation before anyone requested new statements. Evelyn watched him choose patience over revenge when revenge would have been understandable. An attorney entered with a sealed envelope and placed it in front of Marcus. Full back pay, removal of the suspension, legal expenses, a return-to-work guarantee. The last page required confidentiality. This makes you whole, the attorney said. Marcus looked through the glass wall at the city waking below them. Does it correct the public report? The company can issue an internal clarification. Does it protect the workers who filed those complaints? That would be handled separately. Marcus closed the envelope. Then it makes me quiet. No one moved. Even the printer at the far end of the room stopped feeding paper, leaving the final sheet half exposed. Evelyn lowered her eyes to the unsigned agreement, then pushed it away from Marcus. Withdraw it. Grant's voice hardened for the first time. You are risking the company over one employee. Evelyn looked at the list of buildings, the renamed warnings, and the scorched relay between them.
No.
We risked people to protect the company. A technician entered carrying a small evidence drive. Before Derek had switched off his body cam, 19 seconds had uploaded automatically to the security cloud. The footage shook as the camera turned, but it showed a black-gloved hand pulling red paper from the elevator panel. Grant's voice followed from just outside the frame. Get it out before Whitmore comes down. Derek immediately asked for the recording to be reviewed in private. Vanessa asked that Lily's smartwatch remain excluded because involving a child could be misunderstood. Marcus looked at Evelyn. Do not make Lily responsible for proving what adults did. Evelyn nodded. She will speak only if she chooses, and only with protection. Then she ordered the public safety hearing moved to the Whitmore Tower lobby, where Marcus's badge had been taken, with the union, inspectors, parents, and board present. The evidence had become too heavy for another closed room. By 9 the next morning, the Whitmore Tower lobby no longer looked like a place built to impress investors. Folding chairs faced elevator 4. Yellow safety tape crossed the polished marble, and the dark opening where Marcus had once knelt remained sealed behind a clear inspection barrier. Union representatives sat beside parents from the school tour. Building inspectors stood near the damaged control panel. Members of the board watched from the rear, their phones turned face down on their laps. Marcus entered wearing the same faded blue maintenance shirt, but the clean rectangle where M. Reed had been removed was still visible over his heart. Caleb walked beside him, holding the badge inside his closed fist. No one applauded. Some people nodded. Others looked away. Marcus took a seat at the end of the front row rather than beside Evelyn. He had not come as a man already vindicated. He had come because the truth would remain incomplete if the people who had been blamed in silence were excluded from the room where the record was corrected. Grant Hale arrived in a navy suit with an attorney at his side. Derek wore no security jacket, only a white shirt with his access credentials suspended. Vanessa carried a thin leather portfolio and greeted several parents by name, her voice soft and concerned. This hearing must remain focused on safety, she said. Not speculation, anger, or reputational harm. Evelyn stood near the elevators without responding. She had the authority to end the meeting with a statement, but she did not use it. She wanted every explanation entered before the final recording was heard. Paul Reyes began with the black maintenance notebook. He placed the carbon copy beneath a document camera, enlarging the 812 entry on a screen. R4817. Double engagement noise. Do not return to service. Grant did not deny the handwriting. Mr. Reed wrote that entry, he said. But a personal notebook is not a controlled company record. The room shifted uneasily. It was a reasonable objection, and several board members glanced toward one another. Then Reyes displayed the server hash created at 812. It did not show the full order, but it proved an electronic submission had existed before the accident. A submission, Grant said, not necessarily a valid lockout. Mr. Reed may have started a record and failed to complete the procedure. For a moment, his explanation held. Marcus's notebook proved what he intended to do, not what the system had accepted. A chair scraped softly across the floor. One parent whispered that perhaps the truth was more complicated than anyone wanted. Marcus did not interrupt. Reyes moved to the second sequence. The machine room door opened at 8:18 with Derek's badge, followed by a return-to-service command at 8:19. Derek leaned toward the microphone. My credential could have been copied. Senior security cards are used across multiple emergency functions. And the body cam? A union representative asked. I disabled it to protect the children's privacy. Vanessa nodded as though the explanation settled something. That is standard judgment in a sensitive incident. The pressure shifted again. Every piece seemed troubling, but each had been given a separate explanation. Grant looked toward the parents. A damaged relay, an incomplete order, a shared credential, and a camera turned off near frightened children do not become a conspiracy because they occurred on the same morning. Marcus finally raised his eyes. What time were the children already out? Derek's jaw tightened. I do not recall the exact minute. Evelyn placed the bodycam log on the table. The last child cleared the cabin at 11:36. You disabled recording at 11:39. Marcus's voice remained quiet. Then the children were not in front of your camera. The lobby went still. Derek looked down at the table. Reyes played the 19-second cloud buffer. The image shook, catching a black-gloved hand pulling red paper from the control panel. Grant's voice came from outside the frame. Get it out before Whitmore comes down. Grant lifted, both hands slightly. Remove the damage tag from public view. That is what I meant. Loose material near an open panel creates confusion and liability. It was the strongest explanation he had offered. Even Evelyn did not answer immediately. Reyes placed the torn fragment beneath the camera. The digits 4817 appeared on the screen, followed by the purchasing invoice for refurbished Lot 6B and the supplier's warning email. Vanessa opened her portfolio. That message was categorized as routine because the supplier did not issue a formal recall. You read the attachment for 7 minutes, Evelyn said. Reading is not technical understanding. Then why were 2 earlier double-click complaints moved into the same routine folder? Vanessa's hand stopped on the page. The 3 reports appeared one after another. A night mechanic, a custodian, and a contract technician, each blamed for operator error after reporting the same sound. Marcus leaned toward the microphone. I am not here to bury them under my case. He looked toward the union table. Put their warnings back in the record first. The whispering stopped. He could have used the pattern to make Grant look cruel. Instead, he protected the names of workers who were not present to defend themselves. The hearing moved to the glass conference room on the 27th floor for the final evidence review. Lily entered holding Evelyn's hand, the faded breathing card tucked into her sweater pocket. Marcus stood when he saw her. You do not have to do this for me, he said. Lily looked at the pink smartwatch on her wrist. I'm not telling it. The watch is. She sat beside her mother, safely away from Grant, Derek, and Vanessa. The technician connected the original device directly to the room's audio system. The first 3 minutes played exactly as Marcus had described. The alarm, the frightened breathing, his warning not to force the doors. Then his voice filled the room. Put it on me. Grant's attorney slowly looked up, and Grant allowed himself one small breath of relief. Lily reached toward the glowing star on the screen. That isn't where it ends, she said, and pressed play on the 4 minutes no company server had ever received. The recording resumed before Grant's relieved breath had fully left his chest. Put it on me, Marcus's voice said through the conference speakers. Just get the kids somewhere quiet. They don't need to hear adults fighting about blame. Lily lifted one trembling hand and pointed across the glass table at Marcus. The pink smartwatch glowed beneath her other palm, its small star turning slowly on the cracked screen. He didn't cause it, she said. He kept us calm. No one interrupted her. The recording carried the elevator alarm, the teacher's frightened breathing, and Marcus counting for slow beats until the children began breathing with him. Then his voice changed, still controlled but sharper. The R4817 lockout tag is missing. Nobody returns this car to service until the door contacts are inspected. A few seconds of footsteps followed. Grant's voice entered from farther away. Get that tag out before Whitmore comes down. Derek answered. The hall camera is covered, and I shut off my body cam. Vanessa spoke next, her words quieter than the others. I need one responsible employee in the report before the press calls. Reed signed the lockout. Keep the language simple, Grant replied. He is close enough to the equipment, and he already said to put it on him. The file ended. The tiny speaker in Lily's watch released one soft electronic click. After that, the room became so still that the ventilation system above the glass ceiling sounded like wind moving through an empty tunnel. Grant's pen remained pressed against the same word on his legal pad, leaving a spreading dot of blue ink. Vanessa's hand loosened around her portfolio, and several pages slid crookedly onto the table. Derek stared at the dark lens of his body cam as though it had turned toward him again. No one looked at Marcus first. They looked at the screen where the timeline remained frozen. Marcus's lockout at 8:12, Derek's machine room entry at 8:18, the override at 8:19, Vanessa's press draft at 11:43, and the inspection opened at 12:05. The body cam frame showed the red tag in a black-gloved hand. The scorched contact from Lot 6B rested inside a clear evidence bag. The supplier warning, the renamed complaints, and the original notebook entry lay in a straight line beneath the projector light. Each piece had once been explained away. Together, they left no space between them. Grant cleared his throat. The goal was to keep the building operating. No one intended for children to be placed at risk. Reyes turned the purchase authorization toward him. Grant's digital signature sat beneath the approval for refurbished parts. "Intent does not change the override," Reyes said. Derek tried to speak, but his voice came out dry. "My badge could still have been duplicated." Evelyn opened the access report. "Your badge, your body cam, your glove, and your voice would all have to be duplicated within the same minute." Derek lowered his eyes. Vanessa looked toward Lily. She should not have been exposed to this conversation. Marcus stood before Evelyn could answer. He did not raise his voice. "Do not make her carry what adults chose to do." Lily's shoulders eased slightly. Evelyn placed one hand beside her daughter's watch and faced the room. Marcus Reed did not cause this failure. He identified the defect, entered a valid lockout, prevented a dangerous rescue attempt, and kept 4 frightened people calm until they could be removed safely. She turned toward the union representatives and parents. "Whitmore Properties suspended him before completing an inspection. We allowed his job title and lack of executive access to make him the easiest person to sacrifice. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a failure of leadership." Grant's attorney whispered something, but Evelyn continued. "Grant, Derek, and Vanessa were placed on immediate suspension pending outside regulatory and legal review. Their access credentials were disabled before they left the table. All elevators using Lot 6B would remain closed. The full evidence package would go to inspectors, the union, and the board's independent counsel. Marcus's disciplinary record would be erased, his lost wages restored, and the public incident report corrected through every channel that had carried the accusation. On the screen, his name moved from responsible employee to protective actions. Taken. Caleb watched the words change. His closed fist still held the M. Reed badge, its metal pin pressing into his palm. Marcus did not smile at the 3 people who had tried to bury him. He looked at Reyes instead. "Are all 12 properties locked down? Every affected car is out of service." Marcus released a breath he seemed to have held since the lobby doors opened 6 inches. "Then we can talk about my name." Evelyn asked what conditions he required before returning. He answered without looking at the reinstatement papers. "Independent reporting. Union access to every safety complaint. Protection for the workers whose warnings were erased." The authority in the room had shifted toward him, but he used it first for people who were not there. When the meeting ended, Lily wrapped both hands around the breathing card in her pocket. Caleb remained beside his chair, still unable to return the badge or explain why he had pulled away from his father. The truth had restored Marcus's record before the entire company, but as he looked at his son's lowered face, he understood that the hardest thing to repair had never been written in a file. The room emptied without applause. Grant left between outside counsel and a regulator, his disabled access badge sealed inside a clear evidence pouch. Derek surrendered his keys and body cam at the security desk. Vanessa gathered the pages that had slipped from her portfolio, but the corrected incident report remained on the screen behind her. Marcus Reed's name fixed beneath protective actions taken. Lily was escorted out through a private hallway with Evelyn and the child advocate, protected from cameras and questions she should never have been forced to answer. Marcus stayed until the union representative confirmed that every affected elevator was locked down. Only then did he turn toward Caleb. The boy stood beside the glass table with the M. Reed badge in his palm. A small red mark from the metal pin crossed his skin. "I should have believed you," Caleb whispered. Marcus sat so their eyes were level. "You saw people with titles, reports, and uniforms say I was wrong. I pulled away from you. You were scared." Caleb looked at the empty chairs. "Weren't you?" Marcus nodded. "I was." He did not tell his son that strong men felt no fear. He told him the truth. Being calm means fear doesn't get to choose what you do next. Caleb closed his fingers around the badge again, not ready to return it yet. Marcus did not rush him. Some things could be corrected by changing a file. Others required time. 6 months later, the outside investigation ended with consequences written plainly enough that no public relations language could soften them. Grant was terminated for authorizing untested refurbished components, overriding safety warnings, and concealing a known risk. His records were referred to building regulators and the appropriate legal authorities. Derek lost his security position for interfering with access data and recording systems. Vanessa was dismissed for creating a conclusion before the investigation, suppressing warnings, and attempting to control a child's testimony. The 3 workers whose earlier reports had been dismissed were contacted, their records corrected, and their jobs protected. All 27 affected elevators were fitted with approved components and independently inspected. Whitmore Properties published Marcus's corrected report through every channel that had carried the accusation. His suspension disappeared from his employment history. His lost wages and legal costs were restored, but the money arrived quietly by direct deposit. It was not the miracle. The miracle was the new safety council Marcus agreed to lead only after the union, custodial staff, maintenance teams, and outside inspectors were given equal seats. At the first training session, executives sat in the second row while a night custodian stood at the front and explained the sounds she heard in empty buildings before anyone else arrived. Marcus rested his worn leather tool bag beside his chair. Once, people had seen it as proof that he was only a man who worked with his hands. Now it sat there as a reminder that safety often began with the person everyone else walked past. "Listen down the chain before danger has to climb it," he told them. He refused to let the program carry his name. Evelyn accepted that without argument. She had learned that respect was not giving Marcus a grand title or asking him to forgive quickly. It was correcting the system, admitting publicly that she had approved his suspension too soon, and allowing trust to return at its own pace. She began attending safety meetings without an entourage. She asked questions before reading summaries. When she made a mistake, she said, "I was wrong," and stopped there. Lily returned Marcus's faded breathing card during a quiet visit to the renovated lobby. "I don't need it every day now," she said. Marcus folded her fingers back around it. "Then keep it for someone who might." She stepped into elevator 4 with Evelyn, Marcus, and Caleb. The pink smartwatch still circled her wrist, but when the doors began to close, she did not turn on the recorder. She watched the small star on its screen, took one steady breath, and let her arm fall naturally to her side. Caleb stood beside his father in the mirrored cabin. Before the elevator moved, he reached up and fastened the M. Reed badge over the clean rectangle on Marcus's blue shirt. "I know why you stayed quiet," he said. Marcus covered the boy's hand with his own. No one spoke as the elevator rose. It was not the silence of a room stunned by guilt. It was the gentler silence of people finally understanding one another. Months later, after the investigation was closed and Marcus no longer reported through Evelyn's office, she asked him to dinner at a small diner where the coffee came in thick white mugs and no one cared who owned the building. He said yes because she had learned to listen, not because she was a CEO. Their second chance began without promises. Only respect, 2 children laughing over fries, and 2 adults willing to move slowly. In the elevator's polished steel, Marcus saw Caleb beside him, Lily breathing without fear, and his own name resting where it belonged. Dignity had never needed to shout. It had simply waited for kindness to meet the truth and become justice.